Greetings, SGFO212 here, and with the release of the 1.21.2 patch and the ability for captured weapons to be fully modifiable, I figured now was high time for me to return to my weapon mod setup guides and update them with my currently used setups. I will attempt to try to get through all three factions in this guide here, and I also have this little handy dandy H&G weapon calculator that I will use to showcase some things that I want to talk about that need a more in-depth explanation than simply the game stats itself. So, starting with the American weapons, and from the top we have the 1911. The 1911, I recommend the AMF ammunition and the heavy pistol bolt as the most important mods. And that is because with the AMF ammunition and the heavy pistol bolt, it brings the damage of this pistol up to 40, which will guarantee a 3-hit kill at close range. As for the sights, trigger, and barrel, they're the same as every other pistol, and that is the match sights, match trigger, and chrome line barrel. The match sights and the match trigger will cancel the downsides of each other out, which gives you just a very nice rate of fire buff. And then the chrome line barrel will extend your close range damage by 2 meters, which will make staying within that 40 damage threshold, at least on the 1911, out to about 11 meters or so. Next up is the Johnson. The Johnson right now is my pick for the best weapon on the US faction, and I have modded mine out with the sights, the heavy spring, and the chrome line barrel. The chrome line barrel allows the Johnson to guaranteed 3-hit kill by putting the damage up at 41, if I remember right, while the sights give it some much needed accuracy. The heavy spring might not seem to be the ideal internal modification, but with the heavy spring, it allows you some much needed control. With the implementation of bipods, all the LMGs now have very high camera recoil, which means that you need some way to tame that to make sure that you can hit shots with its 20-round magazine. While I could slap on the trigger and the heavy spring or just the light and spring and have a much better time to kill in close quarters, I also believe that with the control from the heavy spring, I can run fast reload instead of tight grip and not have any major accuracy losses. Thus why I believe that the heavy spring is the best way to go for the Johnson. The M1 carbine is next up, and this is a weapon that was added in the 1.29.2 patch, and that is a 15-round semi-automatic rifle that does less damage than the Garand, but has less recoil and a higher rate of fire. The number one modification that you need to go for if you're going to use the M1 carbine is the Jackal ammunition. This puts the damage of the weapon up to 39, which will 3-hit kill heavy set silver, but not heavy set gold. Another couple of modifications, I always try to run the sights and then the trigger. With the trigger, it brings it up to 496, basically 500 rounds per minute, and that's about, I believe I can click it around 480, if I'm not wrong, though when I'm ADS that goes down quite a bit. If you can click a little faster, you can put the light and spring on there as well, to bring it up to about 550. However, one of the downsides that you're going to get, especially when running the ammunition, is you're going to have a little bit higher of recoil, and you have to land 3 accurate body shots in order to kill with this weapon, which is why I don't recommend the stainless steel barrel. The stainless steel barrel will increase your near range by about 2 meters and your far range by about 5 meters, but the recoil downside is too much to justify using it for that tiny little increase in range, because the weapon itself is designed to be a more close quarters weapon than the M1 Garand. So United Defense Jackal, field adjusted sights, and the trigger, that's what I recommend for the carbine. Next up, speaking of the Garand, is the spam rifle itself. I recommend using the stock ammo, scope, trigger, heavy spring, and Scout 2S barrel. You will have people that will say, oh, well, you need to run the match M72 ammo instead of the stock ammo, and they do have a valid point in that. The match M72 will allow the Garand to 1-hit kill with 1 shot to center mass, that's chest or stomach, and then one shot anywhere else, be it leg, arm, wrist, big toe, doesn't matter. And there is some merit to that. However, I personally believe that the recoil increase from the Match M72 means that you will not be able to land a second accurate shot as quickly as if you did not have it. That is why, additionally, I'm not running with the Light and Spring, because I could run the Light and Spring and pump out 6 rounds a second, and it certainly is a formidable weapon if you can do that accurately. But with the Heavy Spring, I'll take these two modifications off, the Heavy Spring and the trigger. We'll see that the stock rate of fire is 276, and then with the Scout 2S and scope, you have a little more recoil, a little less accuracy. And if I add those two modifications back, you see I jump up to 281 rounds per minute with less recoil. That's more rate of fire than stock with less recoil per shot. And the Scout 2S will guarantee that you can 2-hit kill someone to the chest, no matter their heavy set, out to about 70 meters anyway. So that's what I recommend for the Garand. Now, moving on to the pistol. The revolver is always a very powerful secondary weapon. I'd say it's the second best pistol in the game. And the reason being is because of this ammunition, United Defense Super Plus P. As for everything else, I again use match sights and match trigger to give it the rate of fire, and because it's not a semi-automatic, and it's already at 50 damage with the Super Plus P, I only use the light pistol spring and the chrome line barrel to extend that range. Now, if you wanted to go for a 3-hit kill build, you could just use the kinetic ammunition, and that would bring you past 40 damage necessary, but for the full reasoning behind that, let's take a look over at the calculator. Let me go over here and select my good old 1917 revolver and set it up the way I have over here. So, normally, the revolver has an armor penetration of 1 to 3 millimeters. All weapons have at least just a little bit of armor penetration. This is what allows you to damage things like bikes and planes and just normal cars. But if you're using the Super Plus P, that armor penetration jumps up to 6 to 13 millimeters. So what will actually happen, and this used to happen quite a bit, is if you throw, back in the old armor system at least, if you throw 3 AT grenades, like if you've got stickies, and say you've come across a light tank, and you throw 1 sticky on his engine, 1 sticky on his ammo, 1 sticky on his fuel, and all 3 of those get popped, but the tank's not dead, but he's very, very damaged, you can actually jump on top of the tank, aim down at the grill covering the engine, and just start shooting away with a revolver, and you will actually penetrate the armor of the tank, and you can kill it. Additionally, you can do that without having to weaken it against things like cars, bikes, and APCs. So the utility of the Super Plus P also makes up a very good amount of why I prefer, a very large percentage of why I prefer it over something like the kinetic ammunition. Anyway, let's head back to the game. The next weapon is the bar. The bar is very, very reliable, though it is lacking in the accuracy department. The bar has been buffed a couple of times, but right now, what I prefer are the sights, the light and spring, and the stainless steel barrel. It has a better rate of fire than the Johnson, but a little bit less damage and a little less accuracy. Johnson, I do believe, is superior to the bar in pretty much every way, aside from, I think, reload. But it may be ammo capacity as well. But the bar is definitely not something to frown upon. If you're just getting into the game on the American side and you're looking for a decent weapon, the bar will serve you quite well. Now, onto the top tier LMG. The 1919. The 1919 did get its damage nerf down to 39, so if you put on the chrome line barrel, that will bring the damage up to 41, which puts it into the guaranteed 3-hit kill territory. And then I recommend the sight, the trigger, and the heavy spring. And the reason behind that is because if I put on the trigger and the heavy spring here, you'll end up with 587 rounds per minute, so a little less rate of fire than stock, but you also have less recoil than per shot than stock. And this allows you to use the machine gun a little bit more mobile and offensively, instead of just having to sit back and constantly hold an angle or wait at the previous point. Alternatively, if you want a more defensive play style, just putting on the Light and Spring will bump the rate of fire up to 645, and it won't negatively impact your damage all that much because you have on the Chrome Line Barrel, which has an increased range and damage. So you'll still have that 3-hit kill damage profile and a pretty decent rate of fire, and it's a very, very powerful defensive weapon as long as you can hit your shots. If you're using the trigger heavy spring, you don't necessarily need tight grip, but I still do recommend it because the sight still jumps around quite a bit. Next, we have the M2 Carbine. It got a new model, and new firing sounds, new animations, all the good stuff that comes with being reworked. So the M2 Carbine's strength right now is that it is a lot faster than the other assault rifles. It doesn't do as much damage, doesn't have as much accuracy, but it certainly can make up with that, which if you put the spring and the light and spring and the field trigger on, you can get up to 704 rounds per minute, which is my personal recommendation, along with the field adjusted sights, because there's not really any downside to running that. So here you have a very fast, relatively accurate weapon. A lot of people will say, oh, well, you need to run the Jackal ammunition. The Jackal ammunition brings the damage up from 31 to 36, which allows it to 3-hit kill if you do not have heavy set. However, the shots to kill on every other bit of heavy set is the same, at least in close range. And with the weapons and accuracy from the ammo, you're going to lose your effective range out past, say, 50 meters or so. You're going to start hitting less shots, and the recoil may screw you up if you decide to run it at maximum RPM, which is why I recommend just sticking with the stock ammunition. The barrel, of course, is not really necessary. It's, again, more recoil with only a very, very tiny upside, so there's not really any reason to use it. The weapon itself doesn't need tight grip anymore, and it's not as reliant on the scope because the sights have been fixed. However, if you really want to, you can throw tight grip on it and get a more vertical recoil pattern. Now onto the grease gun. With the grease gun, you can try to run a 3-hit kill route by running with the AMF ammunition. Unfortunately, that doesn't really do too well because it only keeps that damage out to 5 meters, which is definitely not a lot. So what I instead recommend is using the United Defense Ranger ammunition, and then the sights, the field trigger, and the light and bolt to try and go with a, I guess, kind of a more accuracy-based SMG. Because the grease gun has two major downsides, and that is it has a low rate of fire, and it has low relative per-shot accuracy. So you want to build towards lessening those downsides, and it will become a very reliable submachine gun. Now on to the 1903 Springfield. The Springfield right now is the best bolt action in the game, at least for infantry, because it is the only bolt action that you can reliably one-shot through heavyset bronze with the Birdie Clay ammunition. So if you want to, if you're a good shot, you can try to run the Birdie Clays. I personally will stick with the good old match M72 so that I could have a standard OHK build with the sniper ammo, the heavy bolt, and the Scout 2S. I like to run my bolt actions without a scope, so I use the match sights. And then the marksman trigger job is not super necessary because bolt actions got buffed. Now without the trigger, it fires at 39 rounds per minute. And with the trigger, it bumps it up to 45. And I'm usually used to around 42, I believe, is my sweet spot. Because your rate of fire influences, it's not just there because it's there. What it is it influences your rebolt speed. And the faster that you can get another round into the chamber is the faster that you can potentially get another shot on target that's seeking cover after already being hit. Next, we have the Thompson M1A1. As for this one, this is one of the only weapons, and the only SMG in the game that I would recommend running the marksman trigger job. And the reason behind it is because the Thompson is the most accurate of the three kind of top tier submachine guns between the Thompson, the MP40, and the PPS-43. The Thompson is more accurate by far, to the point that if you're running United Defense Ranger ammunition and the sight, and even if you run the marksman trigger job over the field trigger, it is still as accurate as running the field trigger with the sight and the United Defense, I guess the Fuchs ammo on the MP40 or the P41 on the PPS. It's still relatively as accurate as the other ones. So crank this bad boy out for rate of fire. You can get up to 725 RPM. It will absolutely shred in close range, but it lacks the bullet velocity. It's very, very slow, the rounds coming out of the barrel. So it lacks the bullet velocity to really be good at range, so you want to build towards its strength of close quarters weaponry. The stainless steel barrel, of course, is not really that useful. It just gives you 1 extra meter of close range, but takes away 1 meter of far range damage, as you can see on the graph. So this is one I recommend on the Thompson. And finally, we have the pocket hammerless, so let's swap back over to the calculator for that one, because I don't actually have the pocket hammerless on that character, but I do know how I would mod it. And you mod it exactly like you do the 1911, with the AMF ammunition, match sights, match trigger, heavy pistol bolt, and chrome lined barrel. And that will get it out to 40 damage, which is a guaranteed 3-hit kill, but only out to 11 meters. But then again, it's also a pocket pistol. If you're trying to snipe with the pocket pistol, you're better off using it, using your primary weapon in front of it, because unless you're running some type of weird gimmick build with Hoarder and say like a flamethrower where it drops the pocket pistol, then you're not going to be using this as your primary weapon. The rate of fire with the match trigger is 376, which is definitely not bad. It'll lose out against other pistols though that don't require that heavy bolt in order to have very good damage. So anyway, let's get back to the game. I believe that's everything on the US faction. Yeah, all we have left is the flamethrower, and that can't be modded. So let's swap over to Germany. And for the first weapon, we have the FG42. Now, the FG42 is a very unique case. I currently have been testing out this build with the scope, heavy spring, and chrome lined barrel. It will 3-hit kill heavyset silver, and it uses the 4x scope to great effect, but it does take a little bit of practice to get used to, because it does jump around with the scoped view. It jumps around a fair bit, and the heavy spring means that your DPS is going to go down, so you're going to lose against more close quarters oriented weapons like modded SMGs, or even other things like Johnson's or AVSs that are modded towards rate of fire. Alternatively, if you want a more generalist build, you can put on the fast trigger and the field adjusted sights. That brings it up to 545, and this is the only build in the game that has no downsides. This build is a straight upgrade to the stock FG42. It does more damage over a longer range, is more accurate, has less recoil, and fires just a hair faster. Like, if you really want to crank out and min-max the stats of this gun, this is the build to do it. Alternatively, there is a third one that I've been testing out, and that is, if you really want something designed for close quarters, you can sit there and place the heavy spring with the lightened spring, and then you can either run the chrome lined barrel, or if you want to bring it up to 40 damage so you can guarantee 3-hit kill, drop in SS Patron and then put on the stainless steel barrel. I should warn you, it does have a lot more recoil than the Johnson and a lot more recoil than the other FG42 builds, but it makes up with that with pure CQC killing power. It is absolutely devastating, and maybe we'll finally be able to mod it on infantry one day. Let me go ahead and swap these back, because I don't want to forget about them. But it's not necessarily up to my liking, and you do need tight grip if you're running the SS Patron, but it's there, and it's an option. So next we have the G43. Now the G43 has the lowest rate of fire, but the highest range of any of the semi-automatics. So I don't have any issue with running the sniper ammunition on it, because you want to bring that slow rate of fire. Uh, you're not going to necessarily be able to pump shot after shot out. That being said, I stick with just the heavy spring and the Scout 2S scope with the Anxious Patron, which is the sniper ammunition. And I use it at a longer range than I would the Garand. And that is because you get to have something like the P38 as a backup weapon. Meanwhile, the revolver, while good, is not on the level of the P38, which is the best pistol in the game. Next, we have the Kar 98, and I run this practically the same way as the Springfield. I don't even mess with SMK Heart, because why would you run it if you can't one-shot through Bronze Heavyset? So I just keep the sniper ammunition, the Anxious Patron, and then run the same as the Springfield with the match sights and the Marksman trigger job, along with the Heavy Bolt and Scout 2 to make it standard OHK. Then we have the MG13. MG13 is it's akin to the Bar. It's a very capable weapon. I do think there might be a couple that outclass it, but as for just general use, the MG13 won't let you down. You can either run it with the Light and Spring and the Chrome Line Barrel, which will allow it to... Let me swap to the calculator and get you the exact numbers. I can't remember if it'll 3-hit kill Bronze or not, but... MG13. So, Chrome Line Barrel, 37 damage. Yes, it does. With the Chrome Line Barrel, let's swap back to the game. The Chrome Line Barrel will 3-hit kill Heavyset Bronze, and then the Light and Spring will give it some rate of fire up to 591. However, if you want to use it more of an assault rifle style weapon without having to grind to the STG, you can swap to the Field Trigger Job and the Heavy Spring. Now bump it down to 538, which is about the same rate of fire of the STG, and give it a little bit more accuracy. It'll still jump around a fair bit, but it'll certainly do its job and do it well. Next up, we have the MG34. The MG34 right now is one of, if not the best weapon in the entire game. And that's because the rate of fire for the stock MG34 was bumped up to 700 RPM. Additionally, it is quite accurate and does not jump around super hard, to the point that I don't even use tight grip on it. Right? I recommend, if you're looking for the most competitive weapon in the German faction, it's not the STG, it's not the FG42, it's not even the MG42, it's the MG34. And this is how I run it. I use the field-adjusted sights and the Light and Spring and the stainless steel barrel. People will say, oh, well, what about the Chrome Line Barrel? Well, the Chrome Line Barrel doesn't put you over any damage thresholds. In fact, let me swap over to the good old calculator, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. MG34 stock does 34 damage. With the Chrome Line, it brings it up to 36. If we compare that to Bronze Heavyset, that's 33 damage. That's still a 4-hit kill. So, I will instead pop on the stainless steel barrel, give it a little bit more accuracy over pretty much a negligible damage increase. So, let's swap back to the game. But 753 rounds per minute is absolutely blisteringly fast. I don't run tight grip on it. You don't need it. You can use fast reload. You can get those 50 rounds back into the magazine as quick as you can. And this thing will absolutely tear through people. MG34 is really, really good right now. As for the MG42, it's really fallen from grace in my eyes. You know, what I run on it right now is I run the Heavy Spring and the Chrome Line Barrel. The Chrome Line Barrel will bring it up, so I believe it's up to 30 damage, so at least you can one-hit kill with the headshot now. Well, actually, I don't even have to worry about that, because Heavyset got changed, so it no longer protects the head. But you get a little bit more. It will guaranteed 4-hit kill to the body then, with 30 damage. So it's a 4-hit kill. Machine gun. It has a really high rate of fire, but the recoil on it, tight grip is a necessity for this weapon. You know, it is very much a bipod only. You know, even with tight grip, if you're shooting past 50 meters, you might as well just hit the dirt and try to bipod and shoot at what you're hitting, or shoot at what you're looking at. You're not gonna hit it if you're standing up. It's very, very underwhelming. Moving on to the MP34, I again, as with the vast majority of SMGs, I recommend the accuracy ammunition. This is the Fuchs ammo with the sight and then the field trigger job. You can add the Lightning Bolt if you want. I personally don't really like it on, I don't really like it. I'll tell you why. Because you can get the special Lightning Bolt if you bought the SMG bundle, and that has less of a recoil downside but more of a range downside. And with the field trigger job, it brings it up to 600 RPM, somewhere around there, for the marksman, which is basically the same thing. But you only have a 20-round magazine, and the Lightning Bolt will mesh with your accuracy and your recoil enough that you might miss 5 or 6 rounds out of that 20-round magazine, which is its biggest downside. So I recommend just the Fuchs ammo, sight, and the field trigger. Moving on to the MP40. MP40 is a very, very competent weapon. It's probably, trying to think, probably third or fourth best in the German arsenal right now. The 34 is obviously on top, and then I would say probably the STG below it, and then it's kind of a tie between the FG42 and the MP. The FG42 is only really good once you can mod it. I mean, it's definitely not a bad weapon stock, but it's also not obscenely good. Meanwhile, the MP40 is very, very competent when modded, and very, very competent even when stock. I've been using it to grind credits over the past couple of days. I just random queuing into matches with an unmodded MP40. But if you're going for, if you're gonna go mod it, you might as well go all the way with the Fuchs ammo, field adjusted sight, field trigger, and Lightning Bolt. Because it is not the most accurate, I don't recommend the marksman trigger. I more recommend the field trigger job, just so that you can try to eke out a little more effective range. It has very, very good damage. In fact, it'll keep a 4-hit kill out to about 35 meters, and it's a very good little submachine gun. Now, onto the 1934. Personally, I am using the same setup that I used for the 1903 Pocket Hammerless. That is the highest damaging ammunition, which is the Wolf Faust, because the Wolf Faust, unlike the Wolf Engel, has higher damage but does not have a it only has a range penalty, not a accuracy or recoil penalty as well. And in fact, let's go check out the calculator here, because I am anxious to see if it can 3-hit kill or not. 1934, Wolf Faust, heavy pistol bolt, 40 meters, and chrome line barrel. So it's pretty much the same damage profile. It's 40 damage out to 11 meters. It's the same as the 1903 Pocket Hammerless. And if you add the match trigger, yeah, it's pretty much exactly the same, actually. So let's go back to the game and move on to the next pistol. So this is just the German Pocket Hammerless, or I guess the Pocket Hammerless is the German 34, whichever one you've unlocked first. Now we have the P08 and the P38. The P08 is definitely not bad. It's a very, very reliable, very fast pistol. It can get to 40 damage with just the Wolf Faust ammo, which means that that's all you need in order to be able to 3-hit kill. The Wolf Engel only puts it at 39 damage, I believe. Wolf Faust brings it above 40. That being said, it is just match sights, match trigger, and I have the light and pistol spring here. However, if you want to, you can add the heavy pistol bolt and then the Wolf Engel, and you should be able to get a kind of a little better range on it for the 3-hit kill, but it won't be as fast. And of course the chrome line barrel, because the chrome line barrel's upside is very, very much better than that of, say, an SMG or the SMG stainless steel or the semi-automatic rifle stainless steel. It's very much worth it to use these on pistols. Now up to the P38. The P38 is the best pistol in the game, in my opinion. And the reason being is you don't need Wolf Faust. you only need Wolfengal to get it to 40 damage. That means that you don't have the horrible accuracy and recoil penalty from using the Wolffaust. You can just 3-hit kill people pretty much right off the bat, because you can buy Wolfengal at ribbon level 1 instead of having to wait for ribbon level 12 for the Wolffaust. Additionally, match sights, match trigger, light pistol spring, and chrome line will give you a very, very high rate of fire of 553. It'll shoot almost as fast as you can click. And it has, because it's only using the Wolfengal, it has very good accuracy. Hip fire, you can ADS and hit shots at a decent distance as well. It's just a very, very good, reliable pistol. Now for the C96. The C96 is unique in that it is the only pistol with adjustable sights. If you wanted to, you can set the sights up to a higher, higher-ish zeroing if you wanted to, but I don't really know why you do that. Of course, we'll start off with match sights and match trigger, and then I'm kind of bounced back and forth. You know, obviously I stick with the chrome line barrel. Sometimes I want to make a pistol that has a little longer range, so I'll run something dumb like the heavy pistol bolt and the DMW Fuchs and try to get those good headshots at range. Because with the chrome line barrel, in fact, let me put that on there. Yeah, with the chrome line barrel, you retain your headshot kill potential out to 75 meters. And that's nothing to scoff at, if you want to put the match sights on there. Let me get right over here. You have decent accuracy out to about 75 meters, and you can use those adjustable sights to try and hit headshots, which is an insta-kill, and it's very, very satisfying. But when it comes to pure close-range power, I always stick with just the light pistol spring and then the match trigger as well. It's not as fast as the Luger with the heavy bolt, or definitely not as fast as the P38. You can put the Wolfengal, but the if you run either of these with the pistol bolt, only the Wolffaust gets you up to 40 damage. So that's what I would recommend, is the Wolffaust with the heavy pistol bolt and then the match sights match trigger. But the good old Fuchs chrome lined heavy pistol bolt combo is fun to mess around. And finally, we have, well, not finally, we still have the Panzerbuchse, the good old AT rifle. Scrolling down, I don't think I have any. But for the STG had its recoil increased, but its randomness kind of decreased. Personally, all that means for me is that I've dropped off the trigger off my previous builds. The best way to use this STG, in my opinion, is to just run the field adjusted sights. If you want to, you can run the trigger. I don't really recommend using the ammo, and here's why. The ammo does not bring it... the ammo allows you to 3-hit kill heavyset bronze, but not silver. So you'll 3-hit kill heavyset bronze out to about 95 meters. But it also makes the gun very, very jumpy. And if you're going to, with a low rate of fire, you're going to have to hit 4 shots against silver above, which silver heavyset is the most common level of that badge. So you want to be able to hit those shots continuously, which is why I use the stock ammunition and just the field adjusted sights. The recoil is very, very vertical, so it's easy to learn. But you also don't want to get the gun to start jumping around, because that means that you're going to have an issue landing the last shot. If you want to make it a little more deadly, you can swap over the field trigger job if you want. I like that instead of the spring because it's cheaper. The barrel, even though it says it increases damage, what it does is it increases the far damage, which is it doesn't drop off as much. Now, if you were to put this and, say, the upgrade ammunition, you would have an infinite headshot kill range. Doesn't matter what range you hit them at. If you hit them in the head, they're dead no matter what. But I personally just stick with only the sights. Like, it's a good enough weapon as it is. Using the sights keeps it cheap, keeps it effective. It will definitely be outclassed in short range by weapons designed for short range, and it will be outclassed in long range by weapons designed for long range. But if you want something that you can just take in and say, I don't know what the enemies have or how far I'll be fighting, STG is the way to go. Finally, I'm going to have to scroll all the way down for this guy, because I finally got a hold of him, is the Panzerbuchse. And the reasoning that I run the match sights and the heavy spring is because, and let's go to the calculator, is because, scroll over here and find it. It's up in bolt action rifles, isn't it? Yes, it is. So, if you look at the ammunition up top and look at the armor penetration and damage, what I wanted is I'm not worried about the armor pen. Right? If I was worried about the armor pen, I would just run the Panzergeschoss, which gives it 40 to 50 millimeters, and it's not bad. Right? But you also have to look at the accuracy. The AT rifles are horribly inaccurate, which means that the Panzergeschoss is out of the question. So it comes down to the SMK-H and the SMK. The SMK-H has a better damage against players, technically, but less damage against armor and pen, while the stock ammunition is cheaper and has more damage against armor. And if I'm going to hit something with an anti-tank rifle, be it a Jeep, APC, tank, plane, anything like that, I want to do the most amount of damage I can, which is why I simply use the stock damage. It'll do the most damage to armor, and that's all I care about. You know, losing 10 to 15 millimeters of penetration, I'm not super worried about either. Because if I'm going to use, if I was going to go up against something heavier, I'd just take a bazooka. But anyway, back to the game. I think that is it, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's just the flamethrower left. So, let's get over to Soviets. So, starting from the top, the AVS had its recoil changed. For the first 7 or 8 shots, it goes up and to the right, and then for the second set of 7 or 8 shots, the second half of the magazine, it goes up and to the left. And once you realize this pattern, you kind of get a hold of it, and you get in control of it. But it's very, very jarring if you've just picked the weapon up, especially if you haven't used it since it was changed. That being said, my old build still stands pretty well, which is the sight, the field trigger, and the URA barrel. But if you just want something that you can grab a hold of and run around and use, because it's what they've done in this last patch is they made it less random, but by doing so, you now have predictable left and right recoil, and they also increased its vertical recoil. So I've started to take a liking to dropping the trigger and then just using the sights and the URA barrel. While you can use the scope on it, it's definitely not bad. The low field of view that scopes have right now kind of throws it under the bus, because you really want to be able to see what you're shooting at. So sights and URA are what I recommend. If you want to, you can slap the trigger on there, and the tight grip badge does absolute wonders. Absolute wonders for the AVS. Moving on next, we have the DP, which the DP right now, I would say, is the best weapon in the Soviet arsenal. If you're looking for one weapon to roll them all, the DP is where it's at. And this build right here turns the DP into more of an assault rifle in the AVS is. You have a 47 round magazine, so you can actually shoot and, not have to worry about running out of ammo halfway through a fight. It's very controllable with this setup, which is the sights, trigger, heavy spring, and stainless steel barrel. You can put the chrome line if you want, but let's hop on over to our good little calculator here and go to the DP28. If you put on the chrome line barrel, it only brings it up to 37, which will make it a 3-hit kill against bronze only. However, the stainless steel barrel will increase your accuracy by 0.05 of a degree, which is a decent amount. So because it's so inaccurate, if you run the sights and the stainless steel barrel, that brings it much more in line with some of the more top tier machine guns. let's get back to the game. The rate of fire makes it very controllable. Once you get used to the rear sight block that it now has, it just looks like modern AKs pretty much. It turns into a very, very reliable weapon. You will get some left and right, and you will lose fights against close quarters weapons that are modded out well, but for a all-arounder, the DP is definitely the way to go. For the Mosin, it's pretty much the same as the Kar 98. I was messing around with the heavy ball just to try it out, but it can't one-hit kill heavy-set bronze, so the heavy ball's out of the picture. I have it just the same as the Kar 98 with the max sights, marksman trigger job, and then your OHK mods, which is your sniper ammo, heavy bolt, and scout 2. So nothing really to see here. The Mosin has the fastest bullet velocity, so technically it's easier to snipe with because you don't have to lead as much. But it also it just doesn't feel right, if you know what I mean. I don't like the iron sights, even though they did get reworked. Next up, we have the Nagant revolver. The Nagant revolver I mod practically identically to the 1917, the US revolver, and I did that for a very long time, which was to use the Medved ammo. The Medved ammo is not bad, because the Medved ammo also has the hidden stat of increased penetration, to the point that you used to be able to kill tanks with it. But as it is right now, I've started swapping to the cartridge Type R. The cartridge Type R will do wonders on your recoil and your accuracy, and it will make it a 3-hit kill to heavyset gold out to about 22 meters with the chrome line barrel. The Medved makes it 3-hit kill out to about 30, 35 meters, somewhere around there. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. But the cartridge Type R has more controllability and more accuracy, and that's something that I've been noticing with the Nagant revolver, is that if you're running the Medved, the pistol itself is simply not accurate enough to really make good use of that. And if you want to, you could drop down to the hair trigger and get it down to 432, which is a respectable RPM, but the match trigger at 442, it might be worth it. You know what? I might swap out. You know what? I'll change it out. So using the Medved and then the hair trigger instead of the match trigger to give it some more accuracy, you might have better luck with that. So I'll recommend this build. I'll need to go out and do some more testing, but you know, going off my comments, my personal experience of I'm lacking accuracy, but I'm not lacking rate of fire. So why not just go with the best of both worlds? So match sights, hair trigger, only pistol that breaks the rules, and then the Medved ammo, or you can go with the match trigger and the cartridge Type R. Both will serve you very well. Next, we have the PPD. The PPD had a very big buff. It's now the fastest firing submachine gun. Not even the Soviet, because PPS and, well, PPSH beats them out. So what you want is you want controllability, because they changed these to have greater vertical recoil, the drum mag SMGs that is, they changed them to have greater vertical recoil and less accuracy, and you can feel it with the PPD. I'm talking, you'll be missing targets at 30 meters because the accuracy is so poor. So that being said, P41 and the match sights are a must, absolute must. And then it's to the point that I say that you can drop the Lightning Bolt. You can run the Lightning Bolt if you want, or you can stick with the field trigger job. I personally say just stick with the field trigger job. If you really want to chew stuff up, you can try to go for the Lightning Bolt, but the accuracy loss, any accuracy loss is a huge blow to this weapon. So with the boosted rate of fire, P41 sights and field trigger ought to get you to where you're going. And where you're going eventually is the PPS 43. PPS 43 has the fastest bullet velocity by, I think it's over 100 meters, but it may be closer to 100 meters. So you want to build off of that by trying to extend the effective range of the gun by using P41, the field adjusted sights, the field trigger, and the lightning bolt. You want to make sure that you can reach out and touch people. This thing has the best range of any SMG, and you want to make the most out of it. And finally, we go to the King Returned, the PPSH, the fastest firing submachine gun in the game. It is very, very powerful right now. The PPSH is very good. In fact, what I recommend on it is P41 ammo, the sights, and just the field trigger. In fact, let me pry them off the PPS here. And the reason that I recommend that is the PPSH is the PPD, but faster and with a little more damage. So you are pushing 924 RPM. If you want to use the marksman trigger, you can bring it up to 944, and if you throw on the lightning bolt, you're over 1,000 rounds per minute. That will chew through enemy infantry very, very quickly. But here's the kicker. It does not do enough damage to really guarantee that. In fact, with the P41 ammo, which let's go check our handy dandy calculator here, I don't even think it does 25 damage, does it? Yeah. No, it does do 25 damage. So against no heavy set, you will just barely hit the kill them with a single headshot at 7 meters. If they have any type of heavy set, you might as well kiss it goodbye. You're not going to kill them in a single headshot. So that's why you want to go for accuracy, because you're not going to be able to rely on this to make that key headshot at range or even up close. You need to overwhelm the enemy with the sheer amount of lead that you're spewing out of the front of this gun. So, while you can use the lightning bolt, I don't recommend it. And that's because the recoil and the accuracy, it does kind of start to jump around left and right, and you don't need that. But the P41, the field adjusted sights, and the field trigger will do you absolute wonders. And I've chewed through 7, 8, 9 players per magazine on this thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. So then we come to the SVT. Now the SVT is unique in that it has the highest rate of fire, and I was memeing about with a different build. So it is viable to put the good old double rate of fire mods on it with the Scout 2S and go in. It's definitely fast enough to do that. It's much faster than the Garand and much faster than... however, if you wanted to, you can also just use the heavy spring, because that keeps it at 266, and then either use the Scout 2S, which would put it at the same accuracy with the field adjusted sights, the same accuracy and the same recoil as stock, but you would just be doing more damage. And if you want to, you could certainly put the scope on it, which will give it a little less accuracy than stock, but the same recoil, and you'll be doing. So it's certainly good to use that, because it'll feel very familiar. It's good to use the setup. It will feel very familiar if you've spent a lot of time with a stock SVT. Now we have the TT. The TT is a very accurate pistol, but it does not have damage, so you want to build towards rate of fire. That is the light pistol spring, match trigger, and match sights. If you want to, you can run something like the Misha ammo with the chrome lined barrel. That will give you just a little bit more damage. I don't recommend using the Devil, because the Devil messes with the accuracy a little too much, and it's the range at which the damage drops off is a little extreme, little too extreme for me. That being said, you can't use it like the C96, because it doesn't have adjustable sights, and the P41 drops the damage so low that even with something like the heavy pistol bolt and the chrome line barrel, you're not gonna be able to reach out and hit shots that far away. Next, we have the DT29. The DT, I believe. Where's my boy Oleg? Come here, Oleg. So the DT you can use at a higher rate of fire. It's not as accurate as something, say, the Johnson or the MG34, so you can make up with rate of fire, and that's what I've been testing it out with, and it seems to work pretty well. You know, the DT's big downside was that it was not very accurate. So I've pushed towards the field adjusted sights and the stainless steel barrel to try and crank out a little bit more accuracy. If you slap on the heavy spring and the field trigger, it certainly makes a more assault rifle style ish of a light machine gun, but you already have the DP-28 for that, so I prefer to put on the light and spring and really start chewing out enemy infantry. You know, if they're going to come at you with 5 guys loaded on a Jeep, then who are you to pass up such a clean slate of kills? Next, we have the Corvin TK, and I'll actually swap us over to the calculator for that, because the Corvin TK, unlike the other pocket pistols, has very, very low damage. Where is it? I believe it that is enough that even with something like the heavy pistol bolt and the highest damage ammunition, it does not have enough damage to guarantee 3-hit kill. It doesn't even have enough damage to 3-hit kill heavyset bronze. So, what I will instead recommend is to go with the first little ammunition here, the 33, because you want something that will put you over 30 damage so you can guaranteed 4-hit kill. Instead, use match trigger and the light pistol spring. And there we go. Now it's down to 30 damage. And that'll bring you up to 553 RPM, but 30 damage. So you're going to have to hit 4 shots, but you can do it very, very quickly. And it's unlike the other pocket pistols where you can have a slow, high damage, pocket 3-hit kill. You actually have to work for it on this one, but it is quite fun. Let's see, what else am I missing? I know I need, there it is, the PTRD and the PTRS. So the PTRD, got it on this fellow here. The PTRD, I recommend the monster ammunition, and then the match sights, and then if you want to put the heavy spring, you can, just for that little bit of extra, just so you could see where you hit a little bit better. And I will swap us over the game so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. There we go. We've got it doesn't really, so the bolt speed doesn't matter as much on the single shot anti-tank rifles as it does on, say, an actual magazine fed bolt action rifle. So feel free to go ahead and use the heavy spring. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it does lower your recoil enough that you can see the tracer of where you're shooting. Say if you're trying to snipe planes with it, you can see whether you're leading too much, leading too little, a little bit easier than you can without it. The match sights are a no-brainer. In fact, let me swap back over to the calculator, and we will take a look at it right over here. So completely stock, you have an accuracy of 0.8, and that's not very good. The match sights bring that down to 0.68, which is, it's still bad, but it's not obscene enough to the point that you're going to miss a tank at 50 meters like you would with the stock ammo. It's another reason why I don't run the Bronya Max. While the Bronya Max does have the highest pen and the highest armor damage, it also brings the accuracy down a fair bit, which means that you're not going to do as much to the tank in the long run. If you can't snipe components, then you know, why are you using an anti-tank rifle? I instead prefer the monster ammunition because the monster has no accuracy loss and brings the armor damage up as well as the pen a fair amount. In fact, I would say that just because of this alone, the PTRD is better than the Panzerbuchse. The Panzerbuchse may beat it out with a slightly higher projectile velocity, as you can see here, but by just the sheer amount of penetration and the sheer amount of armor damage that you can do, I think the PTRD has it. Also, the PTRD has much better sights than the Panzerbuchses, which are locked at 300 meters. The PTRD starts at 100, and you adjust them up as far as, if I remember right. It's been a while since I used it, because we now have something even better than the PTRD. We have the PTRS, which is the semi-automatic anti-tank rifle. And PTRS is the least accurate weapon in the entire game. I know, doesn't look like it, but it is. And the modding is the same as the PTRD, with the heavy spring, the match sights, and the Leonov monster. If you wanted to use the Bronya Max and go, say, Hellcat hunting, or just set up at a water crossing and wait for an APC or a car, you can do that. But if you want just good general damage, the monster's where it's at. Because it does the same thing. Let's swap back to the calculator. It does the same thing as the PTRD. The PTRS has lower pen and lower damage than the PTRD does stock. So what you want that extra damage. In fact, that brings it up quite a fair amount. From, what is that, 337 to 393 to 393 to 528. So that, it's like you're always dealing at least maximum damage as if you were just using the stock rounds. The match sights brings it down to .850, which is still less accurate than a stock PTRD. And then the heavy spring I actually find is necessary. Because you start out with 150 rounds per minute. That's 2.5 per second. You can get up to 172, which is almost 3 per second. But with the recoil animation, I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, because you just, unless you're hugging a tank, you're not going to use that extra rate of fire. I'd much rather slap on the heavy spring and make sure that you can guarantee that you can see where you're shooting at, because the recoil resets at about the same time that you're ready to shoot, almost. So the heavy spring is the way to go on that one. But let's head back over to the game. And I believe, let me scroll down my list here. I believe that is everything, because the flamethrower can't be. Let me go up to the guy that has everything and make sure that I'm missing one, the Maxim Tokarev. So I don't actually have the Maxim Tokarev on this guy, because this is the one that is probably close enough to get it. However, looking at the calculator and picking them up in-game, I know exactly how I would mod it. And how I mod it is the same as the 1919, which is the Chrome Line Barrel to bring it up to 42 damage. That would guarantee a 3-hit kill against Heavyset Gold. And then you can either slap on the Light and Spring, or do the trigger Heavy Spring with the stock ammunition like you would on the 1919. It's practically identical. You know, you're going to have identical performance and time to kill. You're going to have identical performance and hits to kill. The only difference is that you might be missing out a little bit on things like bullet velocity, and it might be a little bit wonkier on the recoil, but that's what you need to be pushing for on the Maxim Tokarev. And that is all the weapons in H&G, and they have been, that's all my updated builds. That's what I'm using as of early March 2021. So I hope this has answered all the questions that you may have had of how one could properly mod their weapons. And until next time, this is SGF0212 signing off. Goodbye.